Thanks again for joining us today for our live stream about the new Sony a7S III. I'm joined now by Toby Shinobi, and Toby is a photographer and budding filmmaker and a member of the Alpha Imaging Collective. Toby, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And Toby, you made a little video that we're going to roll here after having a chance to have the camera in your hands, and let's have a look at that.
Cool.
And welcome back, and thanks again for joining us.
Yeah.
Just work around me, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, let's do this.
Yeah.
And Toby, so talk to me a little bit about what you were shooting there as we're watching that little clip.
Okay, so Kurt had this idea of kind of linking me to music. I know that when speaking to the team about creativity in general, like one of the things I've talked about in the past is how music inspires me. And so I was kind of paired up with Brittany to shoot that piece, and it was just really inspiring to just kind of get out and use the camera and just have music be a part of the story, because I take inspiration from so many different areas, and just having the camera in hand and being able to kind of just vibe and just create, it was a cool experience.
Talk to me a little bit about like how you became a photographer and what brought you into doing this.
So it's kind of like I'd always had like I guess creative tendencies, but my background's actually in law. And I did law for like many years, but like photography was kind of like this escape for me. I used to work in London, and you should probably hear from my accent, and doing law, and there was just so much, I guess, restriction in law. So like often arguing with my boss, or arguing with like the opposition, or arguing with the judge, arguing with the clients. Photography was like this escapism. It was really cathartic for me because there was just so much more control. And so every lunchtime I would just escape with a camera and just go around London and just shoot. And it just became a way of life, a way for me to kind of just escape the rigmarole and the rigor of litigation.
We were talking earlier, and you were telling me that you describe yourself as a visual storyteller. I think a lot of people use that term, but tell me about what it means to you to be a visual storyteller.
I guess to be a visual storyteller, I think nowadays there's so many different social media platforms, there's so many different mediums of like kind of like conveying messages. But I think the thing that is going to be important, regardless of whether it's TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, or anything, I think the art of storytelling is the thing that's going to kind of stay relevant. And I think in order for artists to stay relevant, they have to be able to kind of convey a message, and the message that people have been able to, or the way that people have been able to kind of convey messages from one person to another in the best form has been stories. Like, you know, people just find them more memorable. If you paint a compelling narrative, then, you know, storytelling is a good way to do that. And the reason why I really like this camera is it gives us so much flexibility to allow us to tell stories. I think for someone like myself who's just come up with photography as my background and developed a very distinct visual style, the 422 and the 10-bit bit depth, that allows you to get really close to what I'm used to in terms of like, you know, developing my skills. So just editing that video that, you know, we shot, that you showed just a minute ago, I was really amazed by how much color I was able to pull out of the files. It was game changing for me.
Yeah.
You know, I've used Sony's other stuff. You know, I had the first A7, and then I had the A7R2, A7R3, A7R4, and they're great for, you know, telling the stories. Yeah. But the jump up in what I was able to do with my color and the flexibility, and then being able to just switch to you know, 4K, you know, 120 frames per second. I think the thing for me that the a7S III brings that you wouldn't get in other things is the flexibility. Just, the flip out screen, the touch screen sensor, all these little things just make the camera really, really usable on a day-to-day basis. That just makes it really, really flexible. And I think that's what Sony's been really key in capturing just recently, just making usable tools for people to create stories and be visual storytellers.
Tell me how you think the camera is going to figure into your workflow moving forward.
So with photography being a key part of what I do, I'm still going to keep the A7R Mark IV, which is a photographic beast. Definitely going to keep that on me because I love the 61 megapixels. But in terms of me telling story and me addressing that ratio between having video and stills, just evolving as an artist, I promised myself 2020 was going to be a year when I really kind of established myself as a filmmaker, a videographer. I'm going to have two bodies, and more recently, just using the two-body system has been amazing. So I'm definitely going to have both of those in my bag, and I love the fact that it's just one mount. Sony's one mount system is really helpful. I've got the FX9, and just being able to just use lenses from one place to another. It's that kind of forethought that I think is keeping Sony at the top right now. And
you mentioned that, or I mentioned at the top, that you're a budding filmmaker. You're looking forward to using the A7S III and doing a lot more with the video side, I understand.
It's weather sealed, just means it's you can keep a second body in your bag and not have to worry. Like one of the interesting things about being a Sony user all the time is, like, over time, just seeing people who had the larger bodies and stuff, they didn't develop as quickly as I might have done, just because they would often leave their cameras at home. I typically kept a camera on me, like, pretty much almost every day of my life for the longest time. And you can do that because you have this small form factor. You can do that because it's lighter. The downside is you get kind of complacent sometimes, and you will end up just packing your bag full of everything. So, maybe 4 lenses instead of 3. But definitely, once I get my hands on it again, it's going to be just stuck in my bag because I just really want to dive deep into being a filmmaker. Because a lot of the time you will see people on social media just call themselves cinematographer, director of photography and stuff. And I think there's a respect to the artistry, and there's a honing of craft that some people don't necessarily do. So I really want to kind of sit with it, and because of its small form factor, because it's light, I can do that.
Yeah, it becomes the camera that's always with you. That's sort of cliche, but for you, working with stills, with video, you really want to have the camera that you can have with you and be able to shoot, whatever's inspiring you in the moment and not have limitation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's not to say that this isn't a camera that you can use for stills. I mean, 12 megapixels isn't what I'm used to, but the low light sensitivity and the supreme quality you're going to get from the new image sensor are going to allow for some very unique scenario. I remember talking with Kurt, the director of the Hero video, just saying about being able to kind of shoot handheld Milky Way shots, and that's just like, I mean, there's game changers and there's game changers. That's just something that's just not been heard of. So it's a really interesting time I guess the thing which I'm also appreciative of Sony for is that they have listened. Like, I remember maybe 2 years back, I was at Sony Kondo and speaking to one of the guys and saying, look, we need some more wide angle lenses. And he kind of smiled knowingly. And I was like, I didn't click on it at the time. The next day, they announced the 12 to 24 f4, and I was like, all right, cool, you guys are listening. That's really, really cool. They've obviously since announced the 12 to 20 for 2.8. Again, we need a faster wide-angle lenses. They've listened. People complain about the battery life. Sony changed it. People complain about the flip-out screen. Sony changed it. People complain about the menu. Sony changed it. And I think that's what is keeping Sony at the top of the game. They're really listening to people. And I'm really excited to see what they're kind of going to do going forward. It's been an interesting journey with Sony because when I first joined, in fact, before I even joined, being an ambassador, I would turn up to like photo meets, and I'd be the only guy with the Sony. Everyone else had anything else, and people looked at me funny, like this guy doesn't know what he's doing. And it's been really interesting to see the kind of journey that they've gone on, and how they're kind of like really leading the pack.
We were talking earlier with one of the previous Q&As about usability, and it's one thing to take a lot of feedback and to spec up a device with a lot of that feedback. It's a very different thing to spec up a device and then make it at the same time very usable. So you're talking about taking all that input and making something that's elegant and super usable, which I think is what the A7S III really has in it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's so weird, the loyalty that some people have to camera brands. I mean, I'm an ambassador, so this is going to sound super biased, but it's funny holding the position of ambassador. You get people kind of like looking at you sideways, saying, when competitors announce their products, they kind of like nudge you, like, you must be jealous, you must feel. And it's like, well, I didn't design the camera. Yeah, I'm invested in the glass and stuff. I'm invested in the system, but there's this real weird vitriol that kind of comes where, if you're a Sony fanboy or a Canon fanboy, and it's just weird. I actually love the competition. So, seeing that other people are doing, higher Ks and all that kind of stuff, that's all well and good. But it comes down to, like you say, the usability, and like the lack of a recording limit is, again, game changer. I think Sony learned from their past history, and that legacy, the experience that they've got, they put all that in. And I do. It was a very long wait, but I do think it was worth the wait. 5 years is a long time to wait for a camera, to be honest. Yeah. But speaking to the tech guys, and they were saying, look, we could, some of the things that you're asking for, we could have done them. 422 10-bit, we could have done this, but we wanted to do it the right way. And just playing around with the camera for the short time that I had it, and just seeing the amount of quality you can pull out of the images. And I didn't really have a chance to test out the 16-bit RAW. I'm super stoked to see what that is like. But yeah, usability, absolutely important. The fact that there's no time limit is great. Yeah, if you're stuck with the overheating time limit, yeah, sorry guys.
It's funny, people talk about that 29-minute time limit. It's got weird reasons why it exists, but this camera doesn't have that, which is just awesome. Because if you're not used to it, it surprises you. It sneaks up on you.
Yeah, it does, because it's not like there's a warning. It just kind of like comes off on you, and that's happened to me personally. So it's not fun to just wonder, like, did I? I'm sure I turned on the camera. I did turn on the camera. Oh, it turned off by itself automatically. So to not have that is great, and I think the reason it was implemented is there was a tax break for video cameras versus still cameras, and that's been abolished now. So I'm glad that we don't have those limits, because ultimately, unlimited creativity is where you want to be.
We were looking at that clip at the top of the segment, and one of the things that struck me watching the drummer, going, was there's like no rolling shutter. Like the drumsticks are moving pretty fast, and if you watch the clip, you'll see that they're dead straight, which is a pretty amazing feat. You just we become, I think, accustomed to some rolling shutter, but it's not here.
Yes, and I think this is a great time to kind of talk to the point that there are going to be people who want 18 megapixel sensor or a 24 megapixel sensor kind of thing, but the legacy of the A7S range is this low light sensitivity, and the 12 megapixels is what allows it to have no rolling shutter. It allows it to have the great ability to see in the dark. You can't achieve those things without having 12. So to ask for a camera that is all things to all men, I think I might be asking for too much. Maybe in the future there will be the ability to have larger more megapixels and still have the same sensitivity, but that's something that's down the line, and I think they've pulled out a technical masterpiece.
Yeah. Do you like shooting in those really low light situations?
I do. It's funny. Like there are certain situations when low light is just going to be absolutely necessary. You're going to find yourself in places where the light's not great, kind of thing. You're shooting indoors. I tend to shoot on lots of primes and wide open, but that's not always feasible, right? But I also just, because the sensor is so good and so sensitive, like it's also great in non-low light situations. So I'm excited to kind of get my hands on it and play with it a lot longer and really see just how far you can push it.
And moving forward, like you said, you're going to be using this probably mostly for video, but you're also planning on doing some still. It's that 12 megapixel versus your 64 megapixel A7R4, but it's still going to have that place in your bag.
Absolutely, yeah. This will go in my bag and it will stay in my bag. So to give you some context, when I first got my first Sony was a Sony NEX5N. And for the first 2 years, there was a 2-week period, maybe 14 days when I didn't have the camera on me. I'm thinking I'm probably going to go back to something similar. When I leave the house, the camera is going to need to be with me.
Well, Toby, this has really been great. I've really enjoyed talking to you today. Thanks for joining us on the live cast, and looking forward to seeing what you're going to do with the camera moving forward.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you.